Are the figures that we have submitted to government for the annual count that took place on the night of the 28th, going into the morning of the 29th of November. So all over the country, people conduct this count, and these are the figures that have been independently verified by Homeless Link, and they have been submitted to the government. They'll be officially published in February, but given the work that we're doing and given how much we're kind of asking people to do, we think it's really important to keep feeding back as soon as we know the information, to feed it back. And given the interest that you've all taken in this issue and our journey around tackling rough sleeping, we thought it was important to keep you updated as well. Now, I think it's very important for me to say at the beginning that these figures, 44% drop since the peak in 2017, 37% drop last year. You know, they are not the work of any one person alone. They represent the hard work of hundreds of individuals working in our councils, for our charities, faith organisations, businesses, volunteers. So this is a product of a lot of effort by a lot of people working together right across Greater Manchester in all 10 of our boroughs, and I'm incredibly grateful to every single person who's played a part in helping us begin to turn this situation around. It's also important to say that this is a reflection of the generosity of the Greater Manchester public, who continue to support A Bed Every Night and our efforts to tackle rough sleeping and homelessness. And really glad today that Tim Heatley, who chairs the Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity and the Business Network, is with us, as is Reverend Ian Rutherford, who's been a great support leading the Faith Network for us. And I think it's so important to show that this is a social network that's been built from the bottom up, where everybody's playing their part, and it's a way of making change happen, I think, in a better way than we've managed in the past. So that's the headline. So I'll go on to the next slide. I should have introduced you, by the way, Molly Bishop, who leads on homelessness for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, but really pleased that Mike Wright is here as well. Molly's predecessor, but now Director of Homelessness at Manchester City Council, and it's our partnership with the city that I think is very much behind the graph that you now see. Behind that is intended to illustrate the trend for you. You know, the way in which the speeding up of the progress that we've made in the last year. So if we go on to the next graph, you can see that more clearly illustrated with the numbers of people. So, you know, before it looks like we're here to kind of pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, it's job done. Absolutely not at all. 151 people sleeping rough on our streets is 151 people too many, and this is progress, but there's a lot further to go. Of course, the count represents a snapshot on a particular night, so it does change, but we're confident that the overall trend now is heading downwards and accelerating, and that is the good news that we've got to report today. It's still the case that people will make comment on the situation, saying, "Oh, the situation looks very bad," and I guess sometimes, if you walk out during the daytime, it can look that way. We would always encourage, if we can get this message out through you, for the public to look at the figures with rough sleeping, because obviously the picture in the early hours of the morning is different from what people see in the city centre during the daytime, because not everybody who appears to be homeless is actually homeless. Obviously, if they are in the city centre and potentially are asking for money or whatever it might be, there's a vulnerability there, and they need support. But it's really important to talk about the true position with regard to rough sleeping, so that the public can understand the progress that's being made. And it does mean we can reiterate our message to the public, which is outlined in our advice here, that it is better to give to organisations that are providing support to help people away from the street rather than giving directly on the street itself. Now that's sometimes a difficult message, but it's important to reiterate it again. We've got fantastic charities, voluntary organisations working in all 10 of our boroughs. We've got the Big Change Fund supported by Manchester City Council. We've got the Real Change Fund now in Oldham, Wigan and Lee and other places. We've got the Greater Manchester Mayor's charity principally supporting Bed Every Night. You know, we would encourage the public to donate to the individual charities supporting people or the others that I've mentioned. That in the end will make a bigger difference. But the figures are there, and the trend is clear for all to see now. If you then go into this slide, it gives you the borough breakdown, and as you'll see, some significant reductions in Manchester, Tameside, Salford, and Wigan. In the other boroughs, now in single figures, and obviously it's small changes from single figures is in some ways the place where you would want to get this towards. But you know, one person in Bury, one person in Trafford, you know, that is a much better position than it was. Sorry, 4 people in Bury, one person in Trafford. That's a much better position than we were looking at a couple of years ago. We go on to the next slide. So you'll remember that we launched a Bed Every Night in November 2018, and it's been running continuously since then. There was some disruption in certain boroughs over the summer as we moved to phase 2, but largely it's continued across most boroughs since then, and 3,000 people there or thereabouts have now been supported. And this figure on the bottom has remained pretty constant, and that is about a third of people who are using a Bed Every Night use it to move from the Bed Every Night accommodation to a fixed address. And I think that is for a scheme that's just over a year old, that success rate of around 1,000 people using a Bed Every Night to move to a more stable location is a very, very high success rate. Why is it proving so successful? I would put it to you that the success of a Bed Every Night lies in the fact that it's not just a bed every night, it's the same bed every night. So once somebody comes in to the scheme, they are able to stay in the same bed, in the same location for as long as they need to. And that stability without pressure or without a time limit, in my view, is a big part of the success of this scheme, and that's something that needs to be built on. Phase 2, as you know, is being funded by ourselves. The National Health Service in Greater Manchester came in as a big partner in November this year, also receiving support from Greater Manchester Police, Community Rehabilitation Company, Ministry of Justice and others, and of course our 10 councils. There is some government support through the Rough Sleeper initiative, but you know, it's a challenge to fund a bed every night. We're grateful for the generous contributions that people continue to make, and I'll come towards the end to the calls that I'd like to make on the government today, because you know, this needs to move, I believe, to a more sustainable financial basis. So.